So we have Uranus now in the 18th degree of Taurus, a woman holding a bag out of a window. And I'll read from my text. Thought, belief, and habit, purified through meditation and open-mindedness. Emptying the mind. A mind that is conditioned to make judgments about right and wrong creates a prideful ego that limits the soul's evolution. It must become open and then cleansed of bigotry and prejudice. So this is about clearing the mind of unhelpful attitudes. Neither visionary intention nor mundane ability is more spiritual than the other. Visionary intention or mundane ability. We're in the expression of Taurus called awakening. And so this is about letting go of that which holds us back on a level of mind. The mind is that which creates everything. We create our whole reality from what's going on in the mind. And of course the mind is not well formed at birth. The contrary is true. It's completely open and therefore receives impressions from parents and siblings and later other forces, school teachers eventually and the bosses and so on. And we get conditioned to have our mind believe things and understand things in a particular way. And that way does not suit our spiritual unfolding. It suits maintenance of the status quo. Society, particularly our parents, want us to continue holding on to that which is familiar and safe and at which they have skill. Whereas we don't necessarily want to see it that way, and probably we don't in some ways or another. And we're talking about the possibility of changing the mindset of what went before us with this. We tend to get attached to what is familiar because we have this emotional need for security. If we know what is done and what is accepted, then we just do that and we're safe. But it's not necessarily right at all. It's certainly not necessarily right for us. And it takes quite a lot of clarity of mind and courage of will to break the trend of those kind of habits of thinking. Now, what could be better? Which planet could be better to help us with this than Uranus? It's all about opening the mind to new knowledge. That's what Uranus does, and that's what we want in this particular degree. So we're coming up to a period for a few days, a few weeks really, when the operation of our higher consciousness, shall we say the opening of the third eye, for example, is well served. This is a very good period for having a total liberation of how you think and what you see, what you perceive. This is no small thing. This is a big deal. If we change our minds about a particular aspect of our lives, then that life aspect will change, because it is our mindset that holds in place habits of behavior. If you change your mind about something, you will change your behavior. And if you don't change your behavior, then the mind will simply sink back into its patterns. And that robs us of vitality, that robs us of consciousness. That's not the soul's purpose at all. The soul actually is capable and has the appetite of perceiving each and every moment for itself. That's what living in the here and now is. It's just like seeing what is now, regardless of what came before or what you'd like to come next. What's actually going on now, really? And you see what is. Very few people would be able to do this very well. Very few people do it at all, to be honest. And what we're discussing is that things change, and sometimes they change very quickly indeed, and we just cannot extrapolate past beliefs and behaviors into the future with any confidence. Now, if we think about where we are right now in world history, this process of change is going through an acceleration. Very, very big things have happened in the last few years, such as the changing shape of Europe with the Brexit process, such as COVID, which has not been dealt with, such as the war in Ukraine, which is going to affect food supplies in a very big way, quite quickly, for the rest of the world as well as locally. Big changes are in process now, and we can't assume that our old ways of understanding things are still operable. We can assume that they're not. We have to rethink the way in which we live, the way in which we understand things, what is important and what is not, what is moral and what is not. This will change now. What you can do, which you could not do before, and what you can't do, which you could do before, that's changing. And of course, in my experience and everyone else's experience, we notice that when change is forced upon a person, they become quite emotional. Very often. It's much more typical to expect that than to expect a calm acceptance of what is different. People don't do that very well. So we're expecting a lot of people to become emotional now. And that doesn't mean happy and excited, usually. Sometimes it does, but not usually. It usually means frightened, depressed, confused, anxious. That's what will be, ever more so, ever more obviously so over the next months, for sure, years probably. People will not be able to go through these changes without those negative emotions being triggered within their system and dominating their thinking. So we're going to have a period now where people are less open-minded than they have been in the past, which isn't very much already. So this energy of Uranus is a breath of fresh air. And for those of us that can understand this, it's a gift that we have for the people around us, not to fall into the trap of either assuming the past can continue the way it always has been, which is foolish nowadays, nor buying into the fear that it might not be survivable, or it might get worse, or we might not have food supplies. Those kind of fears are going to become much more obvious in the times that are coming. And this Uranus energy gives us insight into the larger picture, the picture that can only really be measured in terms of Uranus cycles, 84 years. We're not talking about short term here. We're talking about long-term change. Any of the Uranus transits are talking to you about how you're coping with this 84-year cycle that you're in the middle of, that you might not see fully, probably won't. But this bit that we have to deal with, how are we coping with that? We, collectively, all of us, are the agency through which Uranus energy deposits itself into the human realm. What we say, what we think, what we do, what we accept, what we reject, all of that acts out all of these cycles and transits. So part of what we're doing right now is saying, well, a part of Uranus transit is opening up to a new way of seeing things. And you can imagine that Uranus really likes this, because that's its essence, nature. Our job, therefore, is to look at things that we believe, look at things that we've been doing, and just check out whether we still believe them, whether we need to change what we've been doing, and use your insights and your intuitions to decide how to do it differently. Take a risk. Be spontaneous as well. You've got to be Uranus-like in this, or it's not the Uranus energy. So that means you can't check it out. You can't measure it, examine it. It's not like that. Uranus is fast and immediate, really, and it's spontaneous, and it doesn't defend its argument. It just knows what to do and does it immediately. And so in this case, we're saying, be open-minded immediately, now, today. If somebody comes to you with a different point of view, don't repeat what you always repeat. Just listen and take it into account and see a way in which you can embrace their ideas, wherever you get them, on internet or from a person or a book. Embrace those ideas and see if you can make it fit within your potential for a new way of seeing your life. And when you do that, when you have actually shaped your mind differently, that's a very, very big process of reshaping how you perceive things. Then assuredly you will have a different quality of life. Your life will be more invigorated. There'll be more vitality, more openness to greater levels of intelligence and insights and consciousness. It's a very exciting moment, really.